Okay, everybody, good evening. Welcome. Today is January 28th, and we are here at Eidos for another installation of Great Jewish Letters. And this letter is really quite fantastic. The letter itself is not as fantastic as the story behind the letter. We're talking about a letter that was allegedly written by Rabbi Soloveitchik and sent to then President of Israel, Chaim Herzog, in support of Rabbi Meir Kahane. So let's start with just introducing the main characters of this story so that everyone understands the players, and then we could get to the letter itself and the response and the reaction to the publication of this letter. So let's start with, I guess the main character is Rabbi Soloveitchik, Rabbi Yosef Dov Halevi Soloveitchik. Many of you know of him, have heard of him. We've talked about him before. We studied a letter, at least one letter of his. He was born in 1903 and died on April 9th, 1993. To put it mildly, he was a major figure in the Orthodox world during his heyday, when he was known as, he was Rosh Yeshiva at Yeshiva University. The numbers are that he ordained close to 2,000 rabbis over about 50 years. As I've said before, many of us who are in that younger generation who did not study directly with Rabbi Soloveitchik are sort of his grand students, because all of our teachers were his students. I grew up in a shul where the rabbi was a student of Rabbi Soloveitchik, and many of my teachers at Yeshiva University were also students of Rabbi Soloveitchik. He is part of the well-known Soloveitchik family, known as the Beis Halevi. His great-grandfather was the Netziv, Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin. That's his great-great-grandfather. His great-great-great-grandfather was Chaim Volozhin. His father was Moshe Soloveitchik, who preceded him as Rosh Yeshiva at RIETS, at Yeshiva University. A lot more to be said about him, but we could leave it that he is likely one of the, if not the most influential Jewish rabbinic figure in modern times, up there with the greats like Rav Moshe Feinstein. That is Rabbi Soloveitchik. That is player number one, if you will, in this great controversy of this letter. The next important figure in this letter is the addressee of the letter, and that is Rabbi Chaim Herzog. He was born in 1918 and died in 1997. Basically a contemporary of Rabbi Soloveitchik. He was an Irish-Israeli politician, military officer, lawyer, and he was born in Belfast, and he was raised primarily in Dublin. He was the son of Ireland's chief rabbi, Yitzchak Halevi Herzog, who later became chief rabbi of Israel. We'll get to him in a moment. He came to what was then Palestine in 1935, served in the Haganah from 1936 to 1939, and eventually went on, as I said, to become the sixth president of Israel. He was in office as president from May 1983 to May 1993. It generally is a 10-year term for the president of Israel. That's Chaim Herzog. The letter allegedly written by Rabbi Soloveitchik was written to Chaim Herzog. His father, by the way, the current president of Israel, Yitzchak Herzog, is Chaim Herzog's son. Okay? I believe it's a son.
Grandson of Yitzchak.
He is the grandson of Yitzchak Halevi Herzog, named for him, right? Current president is Isaac Herzog, named for his grandfather, Yitzchak Isaac Halevi Herzog, who was the father of Chaim Herzog. He lived from 1888 to 1959, and he was the first chief rabbi of Ireland. And then he became, in 1936, until his death in 1959, he was Ashkenazi chief rabbi, first of British Mandate of Palestine, and then of Medinat Yisrael, the State of Israel. He plays a very minor role in this saga. And finally, Rabbi Meir Kahane. Many of you may know about Meir Kahane. He was born in 1932 and died, actually assassinated on November 5th, 1990, I believe, in Brooklyn by a man of Egyptian descent. And he was, to say the least, a controversial person in terms of his personal politics and his relationship to government in Israel, his relationship to Arabs, and he was a controversial person in terms of his personal life. We don't have to get into the reported sordid details of that, but it had to do with women, young women, women who he was not married to, people who may have committed suicide because of relationships they were in with him. You could read all about it online. But for our purposes, the reason why he's a controversial figure is not because of his personal life, but because of his political opinions. So it's interesting, right? So today, Kahanism has made a comeback in Israel with Ben Gvir and Smotrich representing the modern, that's right, the modern iteration, if you will, of Kahanism. He was the founder of a political party called Kach, which will play a role tonight as well. So the four characters are Rabbi Soloveitchik, Rabbi Yosef Dov Halevi Soloveitchik, and Rabbi Chaim Herzog. Those are the two main characters. Yitzhak Halevi Herzog plays a minor role, and Meir Kahane also is a passive participant in this debate because of the contents of the contents of the letter. Okay. Let's look at the letter. Let's begin looking at the letter itself, which you have in the packet. Let me share the packet with those of you on screen. Okay. Who? I'm not sure. I don't think so.
I think he does.
Yeah, I think he does.
He does? Oh,
Yeah.
I stand corrected.
Pretty sure he does.
Okay. You folks on Zoom, can you see this letter? Okay, great.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so let's start with this letter. Let's talk about the history of how this letter was found. In 2018, and a post on the internet on a website called Sfarim Blog, which you don't have to be too creative to understand what the Sfarim blog is about. It's about Sfarim and things connected to Sfarim. A letter was published that was found in the archives of Chief Rabbi Herzog, not of Chaim Herzog, the addressee of the letter, but of his father, the chief rabbi. It was a fascinating file within Rabbi Herzog's files dedicated to Rabbi Meir Kahane. And in that file, a letter about Rabbi Kahane to Chief Rabbi Herzog from Rabbi Soloveitchik in the summer of 1984 was discovered. Okay, so this letter was found in Rabbi Herzog's archives in a sub-file in Rabbi Herzog's archives about Meir Kahane, written by Rabbi Soloveitchik in the summer of 1984. The background of the letter is as follows. In 1984, Meir Kahane became a member of the Knesset representing the Kach party. They won enough mandates to, I'm not sure how many seats they got, at least one, to be a member of parliament. Traditionally, during the process of building a coalition, which many of you may know, the president invites every party to take part in the negotiations to be able to join the party that has the most mandates in order to form a government. However, Herzog did not invite Kahane to participate in these meetings. He snubbed Kahane and did not invite him to these meetings. It's in response to this snub, to this non-invitation that Rabbi Soloveitchik allegedly wrote this letter. Now, that Rabbi Soloveitchik would write a letter in support of Rabbi Kahane is interesting for a few reasons. Rabbi Soloveitchik elsewhere said that Meir Kahane is guilty of selective citation of Jewish sources as a distortion and desecration of the Torah. So someone who says that about someone, it seems strange that he would go to bat for him in politics in a different country, right? Nevertheless, the letter says what it says, which we'll get to. Also, it's reported that at some point in the 80s, Rabbi Soloveitchik told others that Meir Kahane should not be given a platform to speak at YU. And in fact, he was invited to YU to speak. He was by students. Ultimately, that had to be off campus. Ultimately, he was not granted the opportunity to speak on campus. So it's hard to reconcile this letter, which we're going to see in a moment, bits and pieces of it, with the relationship as it is exists between, or what Rabbi Soloveitchik seems to have thought about Meir Kahane. So let's look just quickly at the letter, and then we'll see the reaction to the letter. So the letter you should have in front of you looks like this. It's on page 1 of your source book. I tried to highlight some of it, but the highlights are not terribly clear. So I'll just do some of the reading. It's not so easy to read the letter, but nevertheless, first you see in the salutation, which those of you on screen, you could see where my cursor is. It's sort of right here. Lichvod Hanasi Lemedinat Yisrael HaChaim Herzog Ben Lididi, the son of my beloved, Hagon Ha'amiti, the true genius, B'sha'arim HaMetzuyanim, Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac. So Rabbi Soloveitchik starts off by introducing to Chaim Herzog that he was a contemporary and close with his father. And then he writes as follows, second paragraph, where he writes as follows, Hineni mevin ki kvodo mitametz lahanhig atzmo betafkido haram birov something v'chachma birov tov v'chachma. I understand that you're trying to do the best you can, right? You're trying to fulfill your position with wisdom and with goodness. V'chi shikulim mishikulim shonim birosho, and there are lots of different calculations you have to make in terms of the decisions you make. It sounds like he's setting him up, like there's a backhanded compliment. I know you're trying the best you can, but v'yafal pi came tam mar b'fib v'lo avin v'gam lo yom bar li lama haya elav lahazmin nitzigei hamiflaga nitzigei Arafat. However, he says, I cannot understand for the life of me how you invited the representatives of the Arafat party, right? He must have invited some Arab members or PLO members who I'm not sure of the timing with Oslo to make the government, or maybe he didn't invite him to make the government, but he's met with him.
Oslo was 93.
It was 93, so this is well before.
Right.
So he's probably talking about he has invited him, maybe he's invited them in general to meetings. However, you've invited them v'chaver b'ritzchav, something like maybe they're also responsible.
His fellow murderers.
It's right. Is responsible for the murder of Jews. You invited him. Uma'an lahazmin et Rabbi Kahane, but you refuse to invite Rabbi Kahane. I don't understand it. And then a few lines later, he says, Heyot v'harabi Meir Kahane shu kitzat Talmid Chacham, fascinating language. Rabbi Kahane is somewhat of a scholar, somewhat of a Torah scholar. Limarot kama v'kama mishiginotav, despite some or many mistakes. Hu Yehudi Yirei Shamayim, despite his mistakes, he's a God-fearing Jew. Hanilcham l'Torah, who fights for Torah. L'chvod Shem Shamayim, right? The Torah and for the sake of God, and for Israel. You shouldn't have stopped him like this. You should have invited him. So first, I don't understand. You've invited the murderers to meet with you, but you won't invite Meir Kahane, who, despite his mistakes and despite his shortcomings, he's a God-fearing Jew who's doing the best he can. And then he says, in the last paragraph, second line, Vani gam marsheli lomar sheyeh. I'm not sure what that means. It says there, bibechina kiddush Hashem, perhaps. B'kach sheyafkid b'nidon kiyum hamitzvot v'yirei shamayim b'far Hashia. You, he says, President of Israel, Chaim Herzog, who is not observant. His father was the chief rabbi of Dublin and then of Medinat Yisrael, and his son is not observant. He says, at least publicly, you should be observant. Right? Bekach ikarevu bekach gam ya'aseh nachat ruach miruba lahorav hatzadikim. And then you'll also give your righteous parents a little nachas. If you were to be observant in public, ha'im yesh gam, I'm not sure, it's hard to write here. Yisod letikva shebanav benotav holchim b'derech haTorah mitzvot hamivinim etzem kedushat aviv harav. If you only understood just how holy and righteous your father was, maybe there'd be a chance for you also to be a little bit frummer. So those are the 3 points of the letter. One is, you've invited Arafat, you should invite Kahane. 2, he's a little bit of a Talmid Chacham, he's made mistakes, but he's a God-fearing Jew. And 3, it wouldn't be so terrible if you would be a little bit more like your father and your mother, and be a little bit more religious. Okay, so that's the letter. The letter appears in 2018. It's like a bombshell, right? Who would have expected?
Was the signature subjected to hand?
Okay, so hold on. We're gonna get to all of this. Okay. So, I'm sorry, Sarah, Evelyn, you have a question. Let me see if I could unmute you.
Evelyn, can you unmute yourself? No.
Okay, if you're able to, just let us know. Okay. So this letter is published, and pretty soon. Oh, by the way, let's just point out a few things. If you turn to page 2 of your source book.
So based on this letter that you're saying, it seems like a contradiction because he's advocating that that Israel should be nicer to Meir Kahane, but yet at the same time he doesn't let him into his own institution.
Right. So that's one of the that is a contradiction, which when the letter was first published was hard to understand. We're going to clear it up. Correct. If you look on page 2 of this, you'll see this this certificate. Meir Kahane and the Koch Party awarded Chaim Herzog with the Pras Idud HaHitbolalut, the prize for assisting assimilation. So obviously this is not a real, this is a little bit of a, he's not winning a prize. It's tongue in cheek at best, right? He's basically saying that you, Chaim Herzog,
Was this
are
given before the letter was written?
So this is in Tuf Shin Mem Hey, and the letter is
This certainly doesn't help his cause.
well, let's see, 19. Someone could look it up online. 1984, Tuf Shin Mem Hey. I'm not sure how those things line up. Lishnat Tuf Shin Mem Hey, given to Nasi Medinat Yisrael Herzog, given to the President of Herzog. Why? Avur Pe'ilioto Ha'anafa V'Hamisura Le'idud Hitpolalut Ba'ama Yehudi, because of his efforts, dedicated efforts to increasing assimilation in the Jewish nation. Pe'ilot Shetavi L'Chisulo Shel Am Yisrael, activities that will lead to the destruction of the Jewish people. Tuf Shin Mem Hey, and it looks like, I guess it's signed by Meir Kahane.
It was 84, 85.
Okay, so it's right around the same time.
This doesn't help.
So it's just around the same time. And then,
I mean, I could see why the government's not exactly so nice to them when they write things like this.
and then turn the page. It's hard to read it.
It had to be shortly after this letter was sent, because 17/08/84 was August 17th. So
Oh, the English
really-
date's on here? Okay.
that's
Yes,
on
on
the
stamp,
letter.
correct.
So it was received, presumably,
Right.
on August 17th, which is clearly before Rosh Hashanah Tafshin Mem Hey.
So it's right before.
So it's right before.
Right. Okay, excellent. Thank you for that. And then if you look on the next page, this is hard to read. So I'll give you the you have this letter, which is the next page of the source book from the Jewish press, where Meir Kahane writes a lengthy article referring to Chaim Herzog as Chometz ben Yayin, which is a
Nice.
Talmudic insult. You are vinegar, the son of wine. Your father, Isaac Halevi Herzog, the great saintly chief rabbi of Israel, was wine, and you, Chaim Herzog, are vinegar. Right? And that is a insult. Chaim Chometz ben Yayin ad matai ata moser amo shel Elokeinu lahariga, is what the Gemara says. Right? Vinegar, son of wine, how long are you going to cause the Jewish people to be destroyed? And he goes through a litany of offenses that he is accusing Chaim Herzog of committing, which are leading directly to assimilation and intermarriage and the ultimate destruction of the Jewish people. So it's quite easy to see that there's no love lost between these people, and not so hard to understand why Chaim Herzog would not invite Kahane into his house to form the coalition, although you would hope that the president could put personal animus aside for this thing, but nevertheless, he does not invite him. I'm not suggesting it's because of personal.
What was the sequence of events? The snub preceded this letter by over a year. Preceded
Right.
this Jewish press column by over a
Correct,
year.
but I can't. But there's the award, which was right around the same
Still
time.
preceded
Right.
the award.
Correct, but I'm suggesting that it wasn't a secret. That
probably did.
Meir Kahane did not like Chaim Herzog. Okay.
So
Then-
can I ask a question?
yes, please.
So first of all, I think it was very interesting in the first letter. That's not actually the letterhead of Yeshiva University. There's no address on it. It just has the two words Yeshiva University. So who
Okay,
knows?
we're
if
going to
it's
get to
actually-
that. Excellent. Thank you. Good.
And second, what people call observant, and I think it's today in this day and age too. You have the worst gossipers who are very machmir on Shabbat and kashrut, and they have terrible personal midot, publicly and privately. And if this guy was really, I mean, my sister for confirmation wrote her speech on the JDL, and that was in I don't know, it must have been like 1970 or something.
Okay.
But if he really was that checkered in his personal life, that is not observance. That is not God-fearing. There is no way that somebody who can't figure out how to do at least, most of the first 10 commandments is God-fearing.
Okay.
Not.
So you're not the first person to point out that Meir Kahane is a bundle of contradictions. Indeed. Yes.
But
For
it's
sure.
but someone else who says that he's God-fearing has it wrong. It
Oh, okay. Fair point. All right, great. So soon after the letter is published on the internet, turn to page 4. The following appears on the same website that the letter first appeared on. Correction and apology for an earlier post. A few months back, we featured a fascinating 2-part post about newly discovered documents from Rabbi Herzog's archive. One of the discoveries of the post was a document about Meir Kahane written to President Chaim Herzog by Rabbi Soloveitchik in the summer of 1984, which was surprisingly supportive of Kahane. A careful examination of the document by the family of Rabbi Soloveitchik reached the opposite conclusion. This letter is a crude forgery. Their conclusion was not derived because they disagree with the opinions expressed in it, nor because they know that the Rav would never have expressed such opinions, but because of many characteristics of the signature, such as a misspelled name, the firm handwriting from the hand of the man suffering from Parkinson's, title and reference of his own father. It is simply an egregious forgery. We apologize, the Sfarim blog editors. Okay, so it seems like that should be the end of the story. This letter is published. It's on Yeshiva University stationery. The person who posts it has no way of knowing it's a forgery. It was in Rabbi Yitzchak Halevi Herzog's private archives. Then the family sees it and says, this is all a forgery. However, not everyone is satisfied with the claim of the family that it is a forgery. And so the family then, on their own, goes on to publish a point-by-point explanation as to why they believe, why they are convinced that the letter is a forgery. And what I'd like to do for the remainder of our time tonight is to go through the points that the family made, that claiming that the letter is a forgery, and then you can come to your own conclusion whether you think the letter is legit or the letter is indeed a forgery. So, and this, by the way, these points were presented by Rabbi Moshe Lichtenstein, who is Rabbi Soloveitchik's grandson. Right? Rabbi Soloveitchik's daughter was married to Rav Aaron Lichtenstein, and this is Rav Lichtenstein's son, Rav Moshe Lichtenstein, currently Rosh Hashiva of Yeshivat Har Etzion, grandson of Rabbi Soloveitchik, and he represents the family as explaining why this letter is a forgery. All right, so let us begin. First of all, he notes by saying this has nothing to do with the content of the letter. They do not want to get into Meir Kahane's politics, Rabbi Soloveitchik's politics. I shouldn't say it's nothing to do with the content of the letter. It's nothing to do with with the content of the letter about Meir Kahane. But they do not want to get into whether or not Rabbi Soloveitchik agreed or disagreed with Meir Kahane. So their first point is, he says, this alone should suffice, an error in spelling of the name. If you look at the letter on the bottom, you see in the signature and the typed name, it says Yosef Dov, and Dov is spelled Dalid Vet. Rabbi Soloveitchik's family says Rabbi Soloveitchik always wrote his name with a Vav. Dalid Vav Bet. And he challenges anyone reading this to present any handwritten document by Rabbi Soloveitchik where he spells his name without the Vav. And in fact, if you look in your source book, you'll see a couple of examples of how he spelled his name. Skip to page 6, where there are 2 examples of that, and page 7, where there is another example of that. Well, right, unless those are forgeries, but these are letters that are in Rabbi Soloveitchik's hand and on his stationery.
His stationery spells Dov with the Vav.
And in his own hand, in his own signature, he spells it with a Vav. So that is point number 1, which the family thinks is enough to prove that this is a forgery. He says maybe you could argue that in the typed version, it's a typo, But it's hard to believe that Rabbi Soloveitchik, in his signature, spelled his own name wrong. Right? So that is point number one. The second point is the title that Rabbi Soloveitchik uses. And that is the Rav would use the title Abba Mari, when referring to his father in his halachic writings. Notably, he called his Yurtzeit Shiurim, his Yurtzeit classes, in memory of his father, Shiurim Lezecher Abba Mari. But he never used that when referring to his father, Rabbi Moshe Soloveitchik, in his signature.
Also, calling him a man of Boston is a little bit of a...
Well, okay, we'll get there. Usually, Rabbi Soloveitchik signed his name without mentioning his father, but if he did mention him, he always used the brisker title of Hagaon HaChasid, or some variation of it, and never Abba Mari. It says, for example, you could look at page number 5, I think, in a collection of letters of Rabbi Soloveitchik, where the arrow is Yosef Dov, again with the Vav, Ben Hagon Marenu Shlita, right? Ben Hagon, not Abba Mari. And there are a couple of other examples of this, which were in the original post, but are not what I didn't bring. So he might sign it Behagon Marenu Harav Moshe, which is what he signs in the example I brought, or Ben Hagon HaChasid, right? But not Abba Mari. Abba Mari he would again use in his halachic writings, but not in his signature, not in his letters.
And can we see this electronically also?
Pardon me?
Can we see this electronically also?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's right there on the bottom of the page.
Well, no, I see the Dove thing, but I don't see the handwritten stuff. But okay.
Oh, the handwritten stuff was. The handwritten stuff is right here.
Oh, okay.
Yosef Dove with the vet.
Okay.
And here's another example.
Okay.
Of it here, and I think one more example here.
Oh, great. Thanks.
With the vet. And then in the typed version, you see the title, Ben Hagon Marenu Harav Moshe, but not Abba Mari. So that is another point that they are making. Then they go on to make a couple of other points. Okay. It's also interesting to note that if you're going to use Abba Mari, if you go back to the letter, you should spell it properly. If you go back to the original letter, it says in the Hebrew, typed, Yosef Dov, without the Vav, Ben La'abba Mara, Mem Resh Aleph. It should be Mem Resh Yud, and we would expect that Rabbi Soloveitchik would not misspell that. Maybe that's a typo, but the family is convinced that is not, and that's just someone who did not know what they were doing. Okay. Then, as Shlomo pointed out, the letter includes the title Ish Boston, which is fascinating. Right here on the bottom, you see my cursor, Yosef Dov Ben La'abba Mari Rabbi Moshe Levi Soloveitchik, Ish Boston, a man of Boston. Right? Very, very strange. So Rabbi Moshe Soloveitchik writes something really interesting. He says, I'd love to see another letter of the Rav in which he signed himself as Ish Boston. Until such letter is produced, I regard this as an additional example of the fraudulent nature of this letter, since the Rav didn't use such a title to identify himself. He was not Paul Revere, and apparently did not consider Ish Boston to be a defining characteristic.
There's another bigger issue here, which is, as was brought up earlier, the Yeshiva University thing on the top. He never actually used Yeshiva University paper.
Okay.
He only used his own name, and his Talmidim until today do that as well. If you ever look at
Right.
Schachter, he only writes letters with his own.
Excellent.
Or
We will get there.
Willig or whatever.
We will get there. Excellent point. Okay, good. There's been excellent detective work. Okay, next point is in assessing the signature's authenticity is a graphological examination. He writes that in our case, the signature of the Rav in the Herzog letter simply fails the most basic graphological test. Since a graphological analysis is by definition subjective, where am I going here? Sorry. I prefer to present the verifiable objective evidence regarding the Rav's signature prior to raising this point. So he says, if you just look at the signatures, they're very, very different. You can't see them at the same time on screen, but you see what's on screen here, and then you see these signatures, and they're just quite different. He says, even if you look at Rabbi Soloveitchik's signatures when he was getting older, they're just completely different than the signature in the original letter. He writes, the Rav's signature is quite distinctive and remained consistent throughout the years. A clear line runs between all the signatures. From youth to old age, in his latter years, the signature is more frail and less forceful than his earlier signatures, but the basic form is constant and readily recognizable. The signature that appears in the Herzog letter is so starkly different from his recognized signature that this is a plain case of black and white and not a gray area. Had it been a gray area which required a judgment call, I would never have made such a subjective claim, but the contrast here is so great that it does not require a judgment call at all. To back up the claim, I suggest that the interested reader see for themselves examples of the Rav's signature in these years, an example from June 1983, which I can show you. This one here is from 1983, very right a year earlier than the letter that we're talking about. Is a letter printed in the first volume of Shiurim L'Zecher Abba Murray, and then there's even a later example from the winter of 1984, and that is, I don't think we have that one, but in the original post, you can see it's very similar, but less forceful. Like the ink is not as dark, but it very much looks like the original. It says one can notice two things from the signature: its basic consistency with his younger signatures and the frailty of the writing. The signature in the letter to President Herzog, in contrast, is inconsistent with all of the Rav's signatures and does not express the frailty of his aging motoric skills, despite supposedly being written months later. It's hard to tell from from the photocopy of the letter, but his claim is that this signature is much too powerful to be Rabbi Soloveitchik's in his aging years.
To go back to Yitzhak's point earlier,
Yep.
you could probably read that this better because you knew probably the content of where he attacks and basically says you could be better like your father. It doesn't seem like the type of thing that Rabbi Soloveitchik.
We'll get there too. Okay, excellent.
The way he talked.
Correct. All right, we're getting down to some of those punchlines as well. So far he's talked about the misspelled name. He's talked about East Boston, and he's talked about that the signature
don't match.
Do not match. Then he moves on to some of the to the letterhead itself, as some of you pointed out. He says anyone who has seen letters of the Rav knows that the letterhead is always the Rav's name and usually, but not always, his address as well. He does not use Yeshiva University stationery or REITs stationery. He says, I have never seen a letter written by the Rav on YU letterhead. He was not the Rosh Yeshiva of REITs, right? He was a Rosh Yeshiva, but not the Rosh Yeshiva of REITs, or president of YU. He was Rabbi Joseph B. Soloveitchik, the Rav, and his stationery reflects this. And I think there's an example of this. Yeah, there's an example of this on page number 6 in the source book.
That's a little confusing. They actually didn't refer to him as the Rosh Yeshiva at the time. I thought he was pretty well accepted.
It could have been, but I think Rabbi Moshe Soloveitchik saying is that was not his essence. Who he was, what's that?
Moshe Lichtenstein.
Is saying.
You said Soloveitchik. It's Moshe Lichtenstein who's speaking.
Correct. Saying it could have been that Rabbi Soloveitchik was the Rosh Yeshiva, but that's not how he referred to himself, and that's not how he thought of himself. He thought of himself as Rabbi Soloveitchik, and that's why he used letterhead that said that, which you could see on page 6 of the source book, It's just his name on top. And he also notes that this letter is written in the summer of 1984, where the Rav was in Boston during the summers. And Rabbi Moshe Lichtenstein notes that he never saw any Yeshiva University stationery in his grandfather's house during those years. So it would be very, very strange for him to have a letter written on Yeshiva University stationery where he did not have Yeshiva University stationery. He also points out, I think, as Shlomo pointed out, that the forger of this letter also made another mistake, because if you look carefully at the letter, you could see that it's not even on normal stationery. It's on what this is. This is internal correspondence, like a letter that the dean of one school would send to the other school if they were corresponding with typed letters, right? This is not official stationery of Yeshiva University. It doesn't have the list of the board of directors or an address, right? This is just internal use type of stationery. He also notes that Rabbi Soloveitchik does not CC people on his letters. And this letter is CC'd to Rabbi Lamb. If you look on the bottom right.
Oh. And Yosef Bergen.
Yosef Borg, who was, and Rabbi Michael Strick. I think Yosef Borg was.
Strick was in Eretz Yisrael, it sounds like.
I think they're both in Eretz Yisrael. Yosef Borg was a well-known religious Zionist member of Knesset. And so it's also strange why he would. Rabbi Strick worked at the YU Israel office, and Rabbi Moshe Lichtenstein is wondering why Rabbi Soloveitchik would CC this rabbi in the YU office if he's sending a letter to the president of of Israel, and also why would he copy? He would copy Rabbi Lamb. Rabbi Lichtenstein writes, since the Rav did not CC people and was unaware of Rabbi Strick's position, that's his contention, this too is an additional reason that at least part of this letter must be considered inauthentic and the work of others. If one were to argue that this anomaly is reason to support the letter's authenticity, I would counter that such an argument would be reasonable if it could be established that the Rav was aware of Rabbi Strick's role in YU, but since this is definitely not the case, he couldn't have copied on a letter someone who he was unaware of his position. And then he goes on, if you look at the letter, he writes on the top of the page, Be'ezrat Tzur Yisrael V'goalo, very top line. And Rabbi Lichtenstein challenges anyone to... He never writes anything like this, meaning once more, I challenge anyone to produce a letter or document in which the Rav used such a phrase to refer to God in a similar context, right? He's referring to God, Be'ezrat Sur Yisrael V'goalo, but that's not something Rabbi Soloveitchik did in any other letter. And there are hundreds and hundreds of extant letters from Rabbi Soloveitchik, and he never did this. He never did this before.
It seems to me like this actually just happened to Rav Shafter a few weeks back, where someone comes and talks to the Rav about something, tells them, oh, this is what's going on. It was great. Okay, yeah, I agree with you. Something's written in his name. They forge his signature and send it out. This happened with this guy who they were trying to get out of jail, this Sotmer guy, I forgot what they call orange juice or something. I forgot what his name is, but this guy that was in trouble. And apparently they were quoting Rav Shafter saying that he should be let out. And then people came to Rav Shafter, how did you say this? He said, I didn't say this. Someone asked me if a guy should be let out of jail. He said, of course he should. He's really not guilty. So they twist words a lot.
Right. Well, here they're not even claiming that. They're not even claiming that anyone came to Rabbi Soloveitchik and asked him about this.
They're saying
because
Soloveitchik wrote it himself.
They're saying this letter was written by Rabbi Soloveitchik and signed by Rabbi Soloveitchik, and the family is saying, Lo haya v'lo nivra. It never happened. And just a couple of other points. He talks about the content of the letter, which the content of the letter when he sort of not so gently gives Chaim Herzog some admonishment for not being frum. He says, finally, I must point out an issue of content regarding the letter. As I stated at the outset, I am not judging the letter based on any presumed attitude of the Rav regarding Rabbi Meir Kahane. However, the content of the letter is extremely problematic for totally other reasons. As can be seen, the letter concludes with a clear admonition and rebuke to President Herzog in no uncertain terms regarding his level of observance. Not only does the writer allow himself to criticize Herzog's standards of public observance, an obviously sensitive topic for someone raised and an observant Jew, he also doesn't shy away from introducing the extremely sensitive and intensely personal issue of Herzog's relationship with his parents and children in light of his problematic observance of mitzvot. Like, you'd have a better relationship and make your parents feel better if you were frum. I will allow myself to state that the Rav that I knew, and I assume many of the Sfarim blog's readers as well, would never enter into such personal matters and grant unsolicited advice and judgment upon his correspondent's personal life and relationships. For that matter, I cannot imagine that any rational individual who is requesting a favor from a person of stature would conclude his message by rebuking the person and making it clear that he is disappointed by that he is a disappointment to his parents. Why the writer of this letter thought that this is a reasonable text is beyond me, but if he chose to concoct such a text, I do claim that the Rav would not and could not have written such a text. This is more of course, a subjective argument. While this is admittedly subjective, and therefore I do not rest my case upon it, but rely upon the above-mentioned considerations, I do believe that the Sfarim blog's readers should be alerted to this perspective as well. And so he writes at the end, ironically, whoever thought to send this letter to President Herzog and to appeal to his zechut avot as part of the letter requesting support for Rabbi Kahane was probably barking up the wrong tree. Rav Yitzhak Halevi Herzog, whose authority is celebrated in the letter, had the following to say about the issues of retribution of Jewish-Arab relationships, meaning you're writing a letter to the president saying that I had a relationship with your father, and your father is so disappointed in you, and therefore you should invite Meir Kahane. But the writer, Rabbi Moshe Lichtenstein is claiming, did not know that Rabbi Herzog wrote the following, which is on the back page of the source book, which seems to indicate that the father, the chief rabbi, would not have been a fan of Kahane. We proclaim this appeal unto you in the name of our holy Torah, the Torah of Torah and justice, mercy and kindness, in the name of the eternal Torah, which is the secret of the eternity of our people, and the name of the honor of the whole Jewish people, lest every man in Israel desist from following the footsteps of the wicked. Let no one allow himself even to entertain the thought of abhorrence, a thought of revenge without just trial, a thought of murder, a thought of shedding the blood of the innocent and whatever nationality they be. This has been our greatness, this has been our pride, that we have guarded our hands against such cruel deeds, even in the most bitter and trying times. Dear brethren and sisters, let no one of us desecrate the traditions of Judaism, which are the dearest and holiest of our possessions, and for which we have sacrificed our lives. Let not a single one of us endanger the life of the Yishuv and our great achievement in the land of our hope. Let us govern our anger and tame our instinct of revenge. Let us continue the upbuilding of the land. Let us continue our defense under the law, which with the aid of him, capital H, who watcheth over Israel, he will deliver us from the hands of all our enemies, and he will live to see our full redemption in our own days. Amen. So he's decrying the very tactics that Meir Kahane has proposed 20 years later, 10 years later, and later as well. So to say that to appeal to Chaim Herzog's grandfather in order to get Chaim Herzog to invite Kahane seems to be not the right move, because he himself wrote how much he abhors the type of tactics that Meir Kahane was celebrating. So this is the story.
Is there no way for them to figure this out? Meaning, this letter is sent in '84, apparently.
Right.
Soloveitchik doesn't pass away until '93, if I'm not mistaken.
The letter is not public until 2018. Right, it's sent to Chaim Herzog.
Right, but it would have been something that was really true at the time Isaac Herzog probably would have pushed back. There probably would have been tension between the two of them. If this is
Well,
truly a real,
interesting, right? It's possible that there could have been a letter back.
maybe it's not put out to the public, but the point is,
As far as we know, we
it would
do
have been
not
dealt
know.
with, and it would have.
No, we don't know.
Would have known.
We don't know.
It doesn't
There's no
make
letter.
sense to look
There's
at.
no letter that was sent back from Rabbi Herzog, from Chaim Herzog, to say, "Hey, Rabbi Soloveitchik, I got your letter in support of Meir Kahane, and I'm going to do it, not do it, mind your own business." Then Rabbi Soloveitchik would have written back, "Okay," or "What are you talking about? I didn't write a letter to you
Right.
about Meir Kahane." But that letter doesn't exist, right? It's not in Rabbi Soloveitchik's archives, nor is it in Chaim Herzog's, Yitzhak Halevi Herzog's archives. So it's quite possible.
Here in Yitzhak Halevi's archives and not in Chaim Herzog's archives.
I don't know. I don't know.
Here, Dad, I got this letter, and why don't you keep it?
Right. I don't know how it got into Yitzhak Halevi's archives instead of Chaim Herzog's archives, but likely Chaim Herzog got it, put it in a file somewhere, and it just sat in a file from 1984 until 2018.
Yes.
Or I'm sure other people went through Yitzhak Halevi Herzog's archives, but were looking for different things, and so didn't pay attention to a letter from Rabbi Soloveitchik. But this person did, and knows his readers on the Svarim blog, and thought it'd be interested to the readers that there was this letter. But little did he know when he published the letter that it was going to create this firestorm, that this letter was forged. I'd love to know like who the forger was. Right. The forger had access to Yeshiva University interdepartmental stationery. That's all. That's as far as we know. We know he couldn't spell very well. He didn't know how Rabbi Soloveitchik spelled his own name, and he put things in there that Rabbi Soloveitchik never used. You can almost make the argument that he wants you to know it's a forgery. Like the East Boston thing is so funny. That like you would think that the guy this is a joke. Of course, Rabbi Soloveitchik wouldn't write such a letter, just like he would never. Right, but it's not around Purim. It's not Purim Torah. So that's the end of the saga. Until another letter is discovered in some other archive, or until someone says, "My grandfather told me that once he forged a letter from Rabbi Soloveitchik." That this is where the story ends, and the mystery is at a dead end.
This also explains why he wasn't allowed to wipe. Because my guess is why you never want to take a stance against the government per se.
But no, I think Rabbi Soloveitchik didn't let him in before this happened, which is why
Maybe
the publisher of the letter
maybe
thought it was
because-
strange that he
maybe
published a
because
letter.
it's-
Why would Rabbi Soloveitchik send a letter in support of Meir Kahane, who he himself said should not come to
maybe
Yeshiva
because
University?
of this letter 1938, which goes against.
But it doesn't go against Kahane per se. It goes against his tactics. Right? This
So
letter was
maybe he
written
didn't
before.
Maybe I'm not taking sides. I'm just saying maybe they didn't want to let him in because why you didn't want to take a stand and say they're supporting one person over.
Could be, although I think they've let other Israeli politicians speak on campus.
Yeah, of late. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that is the mystery and the question.
Do we know why he wasn't allowed on campus?
No,
Is there anything about that?
no, I do not have that information. Maybe someone else does, a student of Rabbi Soloveitchik who knew that, but I don't have that information. Okay, so I guess the question is, whether or not you're buying what Rabbi Moshe Soloveitchik is selling, right? Do you think that the letter is? And if you go back onto the Sfarim blog, you'll see a whole group of people who try to make claims that maybe it was Rabbi Soloveitchik, and maybe there's reason why he changed his mind about Rabbi Kahane, and we could explain the signature and explain all these other things. But nevertheless, Moshe Soloveitchik and the rest of the Soloveitchik family is not convinced. In fact, they are very convinced that it was a forgery, and apparently so are the editors of the Sfarim blog, because they themselves posted the apology and correction of the earlier post.
Off the record, what do you think?
Off the record, I'm on the record. I think Rabbi Moshe Soloveitchik makes pretty powerful and strong. Moshe Lichtenstein, thank you. Moshe Lichtenstein makes pretty powerful arguments that it is a forgery. I have a hard time. I accept his view on this. Yeah.
But even if it didn't have all of the technical things like the bad stationery and the self-referencing and the typos, you don't even have to be the most scholarly student of Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik to know that he just does not. He's extremely modest, careful, and tactful, and would never write that CRAP in a public letter.
Right. Well, that is the most subjective argument, right? Which is why Rabbi Moshe Soloveitchik wanted to be more objective. Spells the name differently, stationary, East Boston, the way he refers to his father.
Yeah.
And then at the end he says, yeah, and plus my grandfather didn't speak this way. And we have many letters to prove that.
What did Lamb say about being CC? What was his response to it?
That's a great question.
Yeah, if he
I
was,
don't-
why did they ever go to him?
By the way, he could have been
was the
CC.
question?
What did Rabbi Lamb say about being copied on the letter? So the question is, did Rabbi Lamb ever actually get a CC? Because if I'm going to unfold this conspiracy theory more, I'm saying they didn't send Rabbi Lamb a copy because he would have immediately gone to Rabbi Soloveitchik and said,
What are you getting us?
what is this? And Rabbi Soloveitchik would have said, I didn't send this. So it feels to me like they never actually sent the CC because they didn't want Rabbi Lamb involved, but they thought that maybe, I don't know, it's strange. If Chaim Herzog saw that Rabbi Lamb was CC'd, I don't know if the president of Israel would be impressed by the president of Yeshiva University. I doubt it.
The head of his institution is notable.
But this is not the head of Chaim. This is not the head of Chaim Herzog's institution.
No, but the whole point is he's trying to show him, I'm copying the head of my organization who this is coming from our I'm representing our institution.
Yeah, but why would Chaim Herzog care? But maybe you're right. Well, what's interesting is
It's not just coming from me. This is how we think at YU.
right.
Maybe
True.
that-
There has been a lot of
The approach.
Still alive in 2018. I mean, I know he had like
Yeah.
dementia or something.
right. So there's been a lot of recent study and publication of Rabbi Lamb's archives. And if someone had seen this letter, I don't think anyone has said, oh yeah, the same forgery that was written about made its way into Rabbi Lamb's archives. I'm going to actually ask, I'm somewhat acquainted with the head of the Rabbi Lamb archives. I'm going to ask him if the letter,
Maybe his
if
grandson
if a copy got to it.
his grandson might be
Whose grandson?
What's his name?
Well, I think I'm going to go to the archive, the archivist. He would know. He would probably know better. But that's a great question, Rabbi. I do not believe that in 2018 Rabbi Lamb commented, and I'm not sure if in 2018 he would have remembered a letter that he got in 84. Although I assume, this is just conjecture, that if he got a copy of this letter in 1984, he would have had a conversation with Rabbi Soloveitchik, trying to understand what he was doing, right? What this is all
The
about.
question is if you could find Yosef Borg and
I think Yosef Borg is dead.
and Rev Strick if they had any
Yeah,
archives also.
right. That's great. But I wonder if anyone has done the research and gone. Yosef Borg's archives, I'm sure, are available in Israel. I don't know if the other rabbi, who was the head of the YU Israel office, if he has archives. I don't know. But yeah, that would be the way to go to these other rabbis, Lamb and Berg, to see if this letter, by the way, even if this letter is in their archives, it doesn't prove it's not a forgery. It just means that they also got a forgery. It could mean that they also got.
But it would be highly unlikely that if they truly got that all of them were silent.
Yeah. It's a great question. I'm going to ask the Rabbi Lamb archivist, and I will report back to see if he says anything. All right. Well, that was fun. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Shalom uvracha.
Thank you.